All-American half pounder, 2 pure beef patties, lettuce, tomato.
Singles going steady.
This is Singles Going Steady, the podcast dedicated to exploring great singles with a particular eye to the punk, new wave, and DIY eras of the last century. I'm Adrienne Madoc.
I'm Steve McGowan, and Adrienne and I are in a band, The Beef People. We released a single in 1986 on our own label, the reissue label Zub Records.
Reissue and maybe issue.
Maybe new issues, yes. And we are record collectors. We're passionate about the expression of pop music perfection that is the single recording. Exploring the mystery of what makes for a great single is what propelled us to begin this podcast.
Begin it and continue it because we are up to episode 070. This is our 70th numbered podcast.
That's our 10-year dog year anniversary.
Right. 10 dogs could have recorded this podcast.
Exactly, right. 10 dogs with a typewriter.
Exactly.
And a microphone.
But they could not have picked a better single than the one we have today, which is by Fishbone.
Fishbone.
And the single is Party at Ground Zero.
This is one of our favorite bands and one of our favorite songs. Came out in 1985 on Columbia Records. They started straight on the big leagues. It's on the Fishbone EP, but it was also released as a single. And it's a 6-minute long song. It's kind of like a suite of songs.
Yeah. It's got many movements, just like a the
Yep.
classical music suite would have movements. The single has movements.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about Fishbone.
Yeah.
They're from Southern California.
Yes.
What area do you know?
They were from South Central
LA.
And we'll probably end up referencing. We've talked about before the Fishbone documentary,
Right.
Everyday Sunshine,
Right.
which details how the band came together. They were bussed from Southern LA out to the San Fernando Valley
Right.
for desegregation purposes.
Where the rich white kids are.
Yeah. So, the guys found each other at the high school and formed the band.
Right. In high school. Yeah, they were just kids when they started. And it's quite an amazing thing what they did. The music is just so interesting.
It is.
It's so unique.
It's unique, and it's greater than a sum of its parts. You
Yeah.
can talk about. I was thinking about, boy, there's who's in their heritage. It's Sly,
yes,
Funkadelic, George Clinton,
Hendrix.
Yes, Hendrix,
ska,
and I was even thinking things like Busboys,
Yes.
there's
and jazz. There's horns. I mean, and not just like ska horns, like jazz horns too.
They're truly like sort of American music omnivores.
Yes.
But with a preference for the funky, the fast,
Yes.
and
high
energy, but also accomplished.
Yes.
I mean, it's not
These guys can
facile
play.
music.
They can play.
They can play, and they're attracted to get a sort of virtuoso.
Yeah.
Forebears.
Right. And this was one of those songs that we saw on MTV. And it's an amazing video for this song, Party at Ground Zero. It's kind of set in a bunker and a nuclear apocalypse kind of Dr. Strangelove sort of feel to it. The Prisoner, the end of The Prisoner sort of thing.
Yeah, it's surreal, and yet it's like hyper real.
Yeah.
The singles from 1985, and I was kind of looking back to I can think about myself at that time.
Sure.
I was a poli-sci major, so maybe I was a little too aware of nuclear threats, but I think that
we were a lot closer back then.
I don't know where the nuclear clock was at
Yeah.
that time, but it certainly felt like it was set with
A couple minutes.
very close to nuclear midnight.
Yep.
And I was looking at, I think particularly in California, that folks had a little more wariness about Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, because they knew him.
and Reagan,
Yeah.
they knew him and they knew him well. And he was president at that time. And
he seemed trigger happy.
he did. He was scary. And in fact, I remember him sort of on a live mic saying, we begin
the
bombing
bombs,
in 5 minutes.
Right.
Which
Ha, ha, ha.
ha ha ha,
Yeah.
which that was. Yeah, everybody was afraid of a slip up of a casual trigger of.
It was the
nuclear
beginning of our gray
disaster.
hairs.
Yeah, exactly, and that's when I got my first gray hair.
Yeah.
And people leaked that because that's what they believe Reagan. They thought Reagan was trigger happy,
Right.
and they also thought he might be a little careless, and that the whole notion was in this sort of. Primitive computerized world that very easily there could be slip-ups that would trigger,
the wrong thing. Just like in Dr. Strangelove.
Dr. Strangelove fail-safe,
now
things.
Dimitri.
And, exactly.
Yeah.
So there was this notion that we were on the precipice, that we were dancing on the edge of the precipice to nuclear war. And we're literally dancing
And that's
on
what this song is about. Yeah.
And dancing for sure, because it's very danceable. But I mean, it was a chilling video.
Yes, it was.
It was scary as hell. It was
But funny.
Funny and scary and thought provoking. And certainly we'll have to link up at the website.
It's a must-see. It's a must-see video.
Absolutely. Kind of got this parliamentary figure. I mean, it's horrifying, and yet it's danceable. Here we're looking at this. But, there was a real sense that nuclear war was a possibility and perhaps an inevitability.
Yeah, something I think the youngsters today might not, really,
get how
felt. Like we did.
I still think I had so many nuclear nightmares. Probably for
after seeing The Day After.
Oh yeah, and even I'm a poli-sci major, and they show you all sorts of stuff about nuclear war and all. So it was it felt very close.
Yeah. Well, after all this depressing talk, let's listen to this really great song.
Right. It's the nuclear apocalypse you can dance to.
Yes, and you can have a great time with it. Fishbone, 1985. Their amazing single, Party at Ground Zero, Columbia Records. Here we go.
Party at Ground Zero, every movie starring you, and the world will turn to flowing pink vapors too. Listen to me. that is far away. The toilet has flushed, and green lights are gold, and doctors will be extinct. The race is out of coming, they don't know what they've done. Signal just one, and I heard just a cry. Just one, and I heard a cry. At ground zero, every move is starring you, and the world will turn to flowing pink pepper stew. Party at ground zero, every move is starring you, and the world will turn to flowing pink pepper stew. Wackadoo, wackadoo, whack, whack, whack. Party at ground zero, every move is starring you, and the world will turn to flowing pink pepper stew. Party at ground zero, every move is starring you, and the world will turn to flowing pink pepper stew. Party at ground zero, every move is starring you, and the world will turn to flowing pink pepper stew. Party at ground zero, every move is starring you, and the world will turn to flowing pink pepper stew.
So there it is, Fishbone. That's a pretty long single. Like we said, I think it's kind of like Adrian was saying, like a suite. There's themes that they come to, they come back to. There's the horn parts. It stops. It starts. It's got the ska part.
Movements. It goes from one movement to another movement.
Guitar solos. All kinds of crazy stuff.
It's an opus.
Yeah, it's amazing. Amazing. When they were signed, they did get signed to Columbia Records. The guy behind it was David Kane, who's a pretty famous producer now. He came up through 415 Records in San Francisco, and he produced Romeo Void, and he produced Translator, and later on went on to produce bands like New Order and some guy named Paul McCartney that you might have heard of.
Whatever became of him.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something about a birthday, but so he was their champion, and he got them through, and that EP, we're talking about the single, but there is an EP that it is on with 6 songs. The EP is just crazy, and every song in it is amazing. And the Fishbone was like nothing we'd heard. I mean, we'd heard ska,
right?
But it's not ska. They get called ska, but
no,
it has elements of ska.
And in fact, that one of the times that they kept flirting. You get the feeling that people were pulling for Fishbone, and they got placement in some movies, and songs were placed, and they themselves were featured in Back to the Beach, the Frankie and Annette reunion movie, and they play a
lot of people were championing them,
right? But they play a song, Jamaica Ska,
yeah,
right, and which Annette sings and Fishbone is playing along with her.
Because in the American radio record selling thing, you have to fit a pigeonhole,
right? And
they didn't really.
But I think they were clearly familiar with two-tone.
Yeah.
But they are so much greater than some of any of the parts that feed into them.
Much more, the influences are everywhere. They come from everything. And so it's a great produced record. It sounds great. So let's talk a little bit about the movie. Like you had mentioned, it's called Everyday Sunshine. It's going to be my recommendation at the end. It is
spoiler alert.
A documentary about Fishbone. It's really cool. It has a lot of really neat animated sequences in it when they're talking about growing up and where they lived and living in projects and being bussed over and meeting each other in school, forming the band. A very interesting story.
Yeah, and the great band that had great problems.
Yes, very great problems, because it turns out, things started off, they were great, and then, maybe then not so good, and then they had problems with one of the members. I think Kendall, had some mental issues. He basically joined a cult.
Yeah, led by his dad.
It's a sad story.
Yeah, and then there were kidnapping charges.
The band went to break him out of this cult. They basically did. They threw him in the van and took him back, and then
you do.
Then they got sued for kidnapping, and they almost went to jail. It's terrifying.
It's an incredible story.
Yeah,
incredible band, incredible
and that's just
story.
a little part of it.
Yeah,
and it does start with them in the present day. The film is at least 10 years old. It's not new, but in the present day, they're playing in Europe, and they're not playing to very big crowds, and they're obviously having a hard time keeping the band together and going through with it. Angelo Moore, the front man, and Norwood Fisher, the bass player, are the two main players. Still.
The Fish and Fishbone, right?
Right. And, his brother, was Fishbone, but
Right. I mean, the Fishers are the Fish and Fishbone.
But there's a lot to the movie. It's definitely worth a look.
Yeah, and a couple things. I want to talk about Angelo being paradigmatic front man.
Yeah.
I mean, he is the paragon.
Yeah.
He is the object that we should all aspire to.
The one thing in the movie, every single person they talk to who's famous, Gwen Stefani, the guy from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, they all say Angelo Moore is the best frontman I've ever seen. I tried to copy him. I ripped him off. He was the best singer, the best frontman. They all worship him. You could tell. They all went to the shows, and they were like, this is the guy.
And we can vouch for it because, sadly, they were such a big West Coast act.
Yeah.
And I think they were also in the college circuit a lot after we were out
Not
of college.
in college.
Right. After we were off the college circuit.
Right.
And, we finally got to see Fishbone this recently, and astounding.
Yes,
They still have it, and incredibly tight.
Norwood's like the funkiest bass player I've ever seen. Angelo was the front man. He came running out into the crowd,
walking on the back of the seats,
you know.
and we saw them on a bill with two other bands opening for George Clinton's farewell Funkadelic Parliament tour, and after they played, many members of the band went out and sat on the lawn to watch.
Yeah, the other bands.
Specifically to watch George Clinton, right? Because they really were learning.
They're really fans.
Still learning from the feet, at the feet of the master.
Yeah, and that was the only band that night they didn't upstage was George Clinton. Because the other two bands will remain nameless, but they were blown away by Fishbone.
Right.
Yeah, so. Fishbone was the real deal, and they, even after all these years, they're still true believers. They still bring it. Amazing sound. They did Party at Ground Zero, and
as their opener.
Yep, it was
as
just
their
crazy,
opener. I mean, how much confidence do you have to open
with the song like that?
Yeah. But so if you have a chance to see them, see them. But what else can we say about Fishbone?
They have a long career. There's a lot of records.
Right.
I don't have all the records, I admit. I've got most of the early ones. And they've gone through some different periods.
But there have been highs and lows, and it seems kind of like they seem to be at an even keel now.
Yes.
I think hopefully the worst of the rough patches are behind them.
Yes, we hope so, because they seem to be going through a renaissance. Some of the original members are back, and besides Angelo and Norwood, and it looks like things are going a little bit better for them as they should be,
Yeah, because they certainly deserve.
And they keep putting out
every good
new
thing
music.
that can go their way. Yeah,
which is great, And Angelo plays the theremin too.
There's a great passage in the film about that.
Dr. Whatever he is.
I know. That's the.
Yeah.
It'll be on our website.
Yes. But,
when old people have a podcast.
Yep. They can't remember everything. Fishbone is a great band. If you are familiar with them, you should dig the records out and play them. And if you're not familiar with them, you should really check it out. That first EP is a must-have. Do you hear anybody covering this song? This is quite a big thing.
Yeah, it's really hard to think of anyone who could be up for covering Fishbone.
Who could do it? Yeah, who could play the whole thing?
Yeah, and it's so iconoclastic and of itself to the point, it really is almost like a autobiographical singer-songwriter.
Right.
But you hear anybody?
The only thing I could think of is maybe the new version of the Specials. Give it like that ghost town treatment. Terry Hall being all dour and singing Party at Ground Zero.
Right, and maybe with Safi.
Yeah, with Safi for sure. Yeah. She was amazing. Yeah, that would be a different take on it, but they could probably pull that off.
Right,
It wouldn't be as energetic.
No, but maybe you get the slow dub version or something.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So.
Well, I'd like to hear that.
All right. So, what's your recommendation this week?
My recommendation, boy, I was really thinking about Reagan in those days, and sort of the days before the 24-hour news cycle,
right?
When there was off-camera time, more off-camera time, and thinking about particularly the lyrics. There's a B movie star in you, because that's really a reference to the B movie star that was in the White House.
Right.
That's pointing directly at Reagan, who had been a B movie star.
Right.
But I was thinking about.
Of course, now we have a reality show TV star.
Right. So we'll
how low we have sunk.
And we had a saxophone playing president, so everybody's got to have some.
I know, really.
Some foot in the business of show, right? Yes. But I was thinking about the live mic issue. And there's a great documentary from 1992 called Feed. And it's based on live mic feeds before the broadcast begins of the various candidates at the New Hampshire primary, right? So this would be Ross Perot being, fitted with his mic, talking before the cameras, before the broadcast.
Yeah.
The camera's on, the mic's on.
You can see how these people really are.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the
Eye-opening.
soupy sales thing about, let's give the little bastards what they want sort of thing.
Right.
But, when you've got that live mic, when people are who they are when, when they're at home.
Right.
And that was Rafferty and Ridgway, because I know Feed is the name of several movies have that name, but you want the one from 1992.
Feed sounds like it would have an alligator in it.
Right. Feed. Don't smell like chicken when you go into the lagoon. Feed. No, it's not that one.
No.
But yeah, I mean that's really interesting, that notion of who are you when before
the camera's
anybody's
on.
looking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my recommendation.
Good. Well, I already told you my recommendation is that amazing Fishbone documentary. It's called Everyday Sunshine. I'm not sure who made it, but again, a really good watch. It's on whatever service that you have. It comes and goes. It's got great animation in it. It's got great music. It's got a lot of people from the scene, from the contemporary bands, speaking about Fishbone. And it's a real eye-opener about how unglamorous it is to be in a hard-working band that's not super successful,
Yeah, and
because there's a point where Angelo has to like move back home with his mom, and it's not all depressing, but there's a lot of like, oh wow, I can't believe this is happening,
Yeah, and when you think about friends that met each other in high school and how people change over the years and
they're still trying to make it
go
work
together.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really like the story of a musical marriage.
Right. And that first Fishbone EP is definitely my recommendation as well, which contains a single, and you will be better for listening to it.
You will.
And jumping up and down on your couch while you're listening to it like we do.
And hopefully you'll get a chance to see Fishbone.
Yes.
If you ever have the opportunity, take advantage.
They're still touring. Go catch them. They're one of the good ones, as Ren Hoek would say. Well, that's it today. Singles Going Steady, number 070. Fishbone. Party at Ground Zero. Scary and so much fun.
Absolutely. It's scary how much fun.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. To learn more about the artists and recordings we just talked about, visit our website at zubrecords.com and click on the Singles Going Steady icon.
You'll also find links to the persons, places, and things we recommend, and much more.
You can find episodes of Singles Going Steady on our website or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Singles Going Steady is brought to you by the power and majesty of Zub Records.
Zub Records. Smart sounds for sharp people.